Grace, mercy, and peace to you from God our Father and from Jesus Christ our Lord. This is the day that the Lord has made. We are glad and we're rejoicing in it. It is a good day to be alive. It is a good day to be in Formation Saturday with each and every one of you. This is our time of our impartation. We come together at least once a month on the third Wednesday to speak with faith leaders on subjects that we believe will increase our faith, make us more effective disciples, make us more effective Christians. And for the month of November, I've been preaching on Sunday mornings around the subject of church leadership. And I thought that it would be absolutely wonderful. I thought it would be absolutely wonderful to bring my pastor, the Dr. Brian Keith Hodges, on to be our special guest. My commitment is that he will speak to our church at least once every year that I am the pastor. And we were trying to get him here for preaching, but his schedule has been booked. So we were glad that he agreed to come on and be our Saturday guest. So help me welcome the Bishop, Dr. Brian Keith Hodges. How are you, Bishop?
I am fantastic. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. The Great Beulah Church loves you. We are exceptionally glad that you're able to be with us on this Saturday morning to talk about one of your favorite subjects, to talk about leadership. So, as we always do, we're just going to throw it around, chop it up, and see where this takes us. I'm going to throw this first question out, and it's all you, Bishop. Let's see if I can get it to cooperate. There it is. Our first question. So tell us, what is leadership? And then somewhere in that, let's talk about why it's important for church life. Like, leadership is one thing, but then leadership in the church is a different thing. So if you kind of bring that together for us.
Let me begin by maybe giving a little backstory about me. So I'm born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I'm born and raised in the Pentecostal tradition. And our church has always been steeped in faithful leadership. I was raised in a home with my mother, father, and 7 siblings. I am the youngest of 8. My father believed in leadership, taught it, and modeled it most importantly. He, like my mother, were very faithful in being the examples and paradigms in our home and showed us what leadership was. Their model for leadership, though, was focused around 3 things. What was reasonable, rational, responsive, well, maybe 4. Reasonable, rational, responsive, and reflective. And so those things stemmed from most of our conversations and most of our experiences at home. As I have navigated change and transitions for the last 31 years, I've lived in Georgia. For the last 30 years, I've pastored between 2 congregations, one for 3 years and one for 27 years. I've been a professor for next month will be 20 years. I've been a department chair for religious studies for 7 years. I've been a consultant for 20 years. I really think that John Maxwell does a great job when he says simply, leadership is influence. And when we break down all of the theoretical and technical definitions, I was reading an article not too long ago that said there are 1,400 different definitions between the words leader and leadership. And that tells us how vast and expansive the subject matter is. Barbara Kellerman says that leadership is a triangle with 3 equal sides. The sides are named leader, follower, and context, or leader, follower, and the situation. And so ultimately, what I believe leadership is leadership is leveraging influence with people and key stakeholders to bring about desired outcomes that are mutually beneficial, profitable, and instructional. And so leadership provides the basis of everything we do. Two things that I have learned as I've looked at the corpus of biblical literature, and that is God is in the organization and God is in the leadership. Those two great examples are seen in the book of Genesis and Exodus. We see leadership and we see organization. I often kid with colleagues and say to them that if you believe in relationship and not religion, then when God says build an altar and sacrifice on it, that ain't relationship, that's religion. And when he reminds them that whenever they do it, he would show up, that's tradition. And we always get a kick out of that. But that's leadership in a nutshell. And why is it important to the church? Well, because the church is God's idea. And if the church is God's idea and creation is God's idea, then the two foundational things that we ought to be using in church based on God's idea of the world and the church are leadership and organization. One flows out of the other. Strong leaders help produce strong organization. Strong organizations help produce strong leaders. It's the ultimate yin yang. And when a church has a strong leader that is stable and that has dug into the church, and when I say dug in, I mean that's there, that's not trying to do 50 other things, not trying to write a book and do book sales and just preach. When they're dug in the hearts of the people, in the lives of the people, in the ministry, programmatic, worship, ministries, etc., then you're going to see routinely the development of organizational framework, organizational structure. And that organizational structure becomes the thing necessary to produce or reproduce leaders. I was preaching at a church recently in Waycross, Georgia, and I asked the pastor, I said, I came here, oh goodness, back in 2009 for the first time, and you had a banner across the pulpit that says reproducing reproducers who reproduce. And he said, oh yeah, he said, not just that, we had a song about that too. The real leadership locked in organization reproduces reproducers who reproduce. If the church will be viable and strong, it'll have to have rock solid leaders. And when I say rock solid leaders, I'm talking about leaders by lifestyle and not by label. I'm talking about leaders who study, leaders who read, leaders who don't look at what they don't have to determine what they can get. Right? There's some leaders who will never go to college, but they'll be phenomenal leaders because they're willing to invest their time and their energy, repurpose their discretionary time so that they can become better leaders. They're willing to be mentored. They're willing to study. They're willing to listen. They're willing to be present. They're willing to take notes about what did work and what didn't work. They're willing to be reflective. They're willing to be critical. They're willing to have markers and assessments necessary to look at who they are and where they are and what they're doing. And that's the true mark of a leader. That leader is going to produce every single time because they're willing to be invested. We are told that the greatest strength is humility, and the greatest tool in the leader's toolbox is humility. Their willingness to not look at their successes and their achievement or their promotions and determine that they have arrived. The truth is, in the kingdom, we don't go this way, we go this way. And that our commitment is going to be to serve toward self-sufficiency. Serve, lead toward a sufficiency that brings us into a place where we are committed and we are focused toward desired outcomes.
This is why you're my bishop. This is exactly why.
It's my honor, I want you to know.
This is exactly why. I'm already almost out of space on my page of notes. I mean,
it's my honor, my complete honor. I want Greater Beulah to know that it's my honor, and he could have picked anybody, and I'm still befuddled why he picked me, because we certainly,
we just saw why.
I'm certainly impressed with your pastor. I'm certainly impressed with him.
So, I want to see if you'll dig into something that you gave us.
Of course.
You were talking about the model you learned at home, and you gave us 4 R's. Would you dig into those R's? You gave us responsible, rational, responsive, and reflexive.
reflective.
Would you dig into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, and so I think what my parents wanted us to see, especially being African Americans in the urban city center of Detroit, there's a set of variables that you have to navigate and negotiate. Them coming from rural South, Central Florida. At the time, Clermont was agricultural. Kissimmee, St. Cloud, Clearmount, all of these are now suburbs of Orlando. And so they bring with them these unimpeachable Southern morals and values to the concrete jungle, if you will. And they're raising their children in the inner city of Detroit. And those four things are things that are important. My dad taught us to be reflective because he wanted us to grow in wisdom. If wisdom is knowledge that you gain through experience after execution, then what you'll discover is my dad wanted you to think before you did anything. And why? Why does he want you to think before you did anything? Because if you've gone through anything before and you've not gained anything, you're destined to repeat it again. And we got a chance to see firsthand people who had repeated the cycle of failure, the cycle of alcoholism, drug addiction, the addiction to pessimistic and negative outcomes. He taught us to be reflective as a way to lead our lives, to lead our decisions. Be reflective. Here's what you did. Here's why you did it. Now, what are you going to do as a result of that? Right? He taught us to be reasonable. One of the things my dad would say is nothing is always or never. And so he told us not to live between two infinities. If you fail, get up. If you have a bad day, get up. If you have a bad grade, get up. If you have a bad moment, get up. And to live between the beauty of possibility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, live between the beauty of possibility, right? If person, I always lose. No, you don't always lose. I always lose. I always lose. I always fail. No, you don't. Live in the dynamic beauty of possibility. And that is, if I keep trying, something is going to break. To be responsive. My dad would say to us, if you see a piece of paper, pick it up. That's being responsive and responsible. You see something out of place, put it in place. That's being responsive and responsible. You know that there's a duty. In our home, we didn't necessarily have assigned chores. My parents taught us, if you see something, take care of it. You could see a dish in the sink, doesn't matter if it's your dish or not, wash it, because that goes to the cultural blessing of the home. Our home is blessed culturally because people are responsive and responsible and reasonable and rational, right? And so my dad would say that. So now, Doc, if I see something out of place at Gathering the Champions, I don't wait and say, oh, armor bearer get it, adjutant get it, usher minister get it, right? When I went to my first church, they hadn't cut the grass. So I put my lawnmower in my car and I went and I cut the grass. Wow, we got to pay them. We got to pay them for cutting the grass. I said, well, I cut it. They stopped talking about paying then when they found out I cut it. And someone asked me why did I do it. I said, it's what my parents taught me. Nobody had to tell me to cut the grass. This is God's house. You're going to do that. Real leadership is not waiting to be led. Real leadership is setting the standard. It is pushing toward areas of success, responding to need, and in the turn of responding to need, being present and making sure things are getting done. Real leaders are self-motivators. They're not just self-sufficient, they're self-motivators. Real leaders are people that get up and get things done. John Cherry was saying one time at a pastor's conference, there's 300-400 pastors there. He said, y'all go ahead and pray, I'm going to go ahead and do it. When y'all get done praying, it'll be done. And what John Cherry was saying is he's saying we got a whole lot of people that say they're leaders by label, but not leaders by lifestyle and demonstration. Real leaders work. Real leaders work. There was a conversation that went on about Billy Graham and Martin Luther King. And one of the guys was actually in the room and he was telling me the story. He said he looked at Martin Luther King's pants and Martin Luther King's pants were wrinkled. He looked at Billy Graham's pants and they were just perfectly pressed. And he said, you know why? I said, no. He said, Martin Luther King was in the streets. He was in meetings. He was up and down. Billy Graham was in his room praying. And I thought to myself, that's the ticket.
Yeah.
The ticket is we should see the evidences of activity in our leaders' lives. The evidence of activity ought to be plastered in our lives. That's what leadership is. And leadership in the church is essential because the evidence speaks toward the lordship of Jesus Christ and the kingdom at hand.
Oh, wow.
We have leaders in the church so that the kingdom manifests. We have leaders in the church so that people begin to see the replicated responsibility of us out of Matthew 28. Go ye therefore. Right? At the end of the day, go ye therefore is the reason we have every ministry, every auxiliary, and every leader in the church. Go ye therefore. When I hear people say, Dr. Nichols, I hear people say, we need to get outside the four walls of the church. Well, not all of us.
Absolutely.
I mean, we go out and evangelize, then we got to come and disciple. We got everybody out evangelizing, nobody discipling, the church is going to die. You need people. We got to get outside these four walls of church. Not everybody, you go. The one that's saying we got to get out, you go.
And when y'all get finished, we'll be here.
Right. We'll be here discipling them. We'll be the one teaching Sunday school. We'll be the one showing them how to serve in ministry. We'll be the one showing them how to work out their soul salvation and fear and trembling. We'll be the one showing them how to sing four-part harmony. We'll be the one showing them how to serve the church and make sure that it is representative of the kingdom of God.
Wow. This is absolutely excellent. I want to raise this second question because I think this is going to take us to a deeper level of where you're already talking. So how do we start evaluating one's leadership capacity, and then once we've assessed where we are, how do we develop it to take it to the next level?
That's a really, really good question. Let me tell you 5 things every church needs: system, structure, strategies, programs, practices. System, structure, strategy, programs, practices. Every leader will have to be evaluated based on how they operated in those 5. What are the standards? What are the norms? What are the expectations? Have those expectations been articulated? For example, if we're going to make an usher, have we sat down and said, here's what an usher is, here's what an usher does, here's how an usher looks, here's how an usher serves. These are the professional standards. They have to be at church 30 minutes before the worship service starts. They got to be here on Sunday and on Wednesday. Those people are also going to have to do additional training. We're going to be reading Usher 101 book by John Smith, right? Did this person do that? You can't make an assessment of an individual until you give them the right kind of variables to help them live up to the standards, right? If there's no metric and there's no measurement, there's nothing you can measure them by. So you have to give them the right kind of information. Here are the standards. Here's the job description. Here are the ethical standards. Here's what we're looking for. Here's what we need to glorify God and to honor the integrity of Greater Beulah. Here's what we need, right? That's where we start. And so before we start talking about evaluation, we've got to ensure that we've given them the right kind of information. Right? So when J. Allen Caldwell gave me my first preaching lesson, he said a good sermon is going to have 3 things: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And the next one, he said, now here's what an introduction looks like. Here's what a body looks like. Here's what a conclusion looks like. Then the next one, he said, here's what transitions look like. Here's what illustrations look like. Right. So by the time we finished, he'd given me enough information to create a sermon. Then he was able to evaluate it based on what he told me. So when we start talking about leaders, we have to ask them and not assume, right? There's no assumptions and there's no espoused values, espoused expectations, right? You're a pastor. You're supposed to know, is this what the expectation was? Well, what is the expectation? All pastors do that. Not all pastors. You know what I mean? So there's got to be, in a very granular way, this outline of the expectations. What are the expectations? What are the standards? What are the variables? What are the norms? What's the professional conduct? And they've got to be measured out to the degree that we know. I had a lady come into my office one day, and she is as hot as fish grease. She is furious because she goes home and there's a boy in her daughter's room, and she's letting her have it. The daughter won't lift her head up. Her mom's going a mile a minute. Finally, when her mom stopped, I asked her, I said, did you ever tell her she couldn't have a boy in her room? Hey, girl, no, you can't have a boy in the room. I said, that's not what I asked. My question was, did you ever tell her she couldn't? No, I ain't tell her she was supposed to know. I said, that's why she had one in there. She didn't know. And the little girl looked up and she said, I didn't know. until you came home mad. I didn't know it was a problem, right? We can't hold a person accountable to something that we've not made them aware of. Accountability is nothing if we haven't made them aware. You got to have those two ways. Accountability is based on what we've made them aware of. What's the standard? What's the measurement? What's the metric? How are we going to measure? How are we going to measure them? And how are we going to say to them, these are the things with which we're going to require that you know, right? We cannot hold that. What's been happening, unfortunately, is we've been mad with people that we've not mentored. We've been upset with people that we have not given the right kind of metrics. And again, that espousing piece is just not good. You ought to know. You ought to know. Life is so dynamic and different today that there's no assumptions that we know.
Wow.
And no assumptions. So that's the answer. That's my response to the question.
Yeah.
Part A. Give me part B again.
Part B. So now that we know that we have to give the information first, we've given the information. We have the 5 things that we need. We need systems, structures, strategies, programs, and practices. So now, how do we start developing our capacity once we've given this information to start?
Well, I think a really good idea would be to help people form their thinking around it. It's kind of like when we learned how to ride a bike. First thing we did is we saw a bike. Second thing we did is we saw somebody ride a bike. Third thing we did is got on the bike. And the fourth thing we did is had somebody help us, or they put training wheels on. Do you know how I knew it was time that I no longer had training wheels? When I could balance the bike and the training wheels no longer touched the ground. Then my father took them off. Wow. So as long as you're like this, you need training wheels. If not, you're going to fall. And so what we've got to do is, and I guess the way I want to transition this, Dr. Mickles, is we've got to have moments where people are developed in intimate settings, hand-holding, kneecap to kneecap environments. And I know that's going to be slow, but I would rather have slow and thorough than fast and incompetent. I am a huge fan, and I have been all of my life, Dr. Mickles, of one-pot meals. And so I like barbecue turkey wings. And so what I'll do is I'll take the turkey wings out when I'm on my way to the gym, let them come to room temperature, marinate them, do everything. Then I chop up an onion and garlic, and I put them in my crock pot. I know I'm going to be at work between 8 and 10 hours, so I put them on low. When I come home, they're done. I pour the fat off, doctor them up a little bit, pour a bottle of barbecue sauce over them, turn it on high. 30 minutes later, I got barbecue turkey wings, right? It took 8, 10, 12 hours to do it. There was process, but finally I got what I need. And I think that's the other thing. We have to remember that we are growing ministry with long patience. Long patience. This is not a microwave generation. This is not a microwave process, I should say. We're growing people with long patience, long enduring patience.
That's an interesting turn of phrase, that long patience. Okay, so walk us through this, helping people form how they think around leadership. Hand holding, knee to knee, long process, long patience, taking long, slow, making sure they get it rather than fast, and they walk away with nothing. How do we start shaping the mind of the leader so that they can find that balance through the process?
Yeah, I think it starts with kneecap to kneecap conversations. Then I think it starts with assignments. Hey, Brother Johnson, I need you to read this book. And what we're going to do is we're going to meet every week for the next 8 weeks. You should have finished all 8 chapters in 8 weeks. And we're going to talk about what does that mean, and then what does that mean to our church. What does it mean? How do we see this in our church? How do we see it develop? And next year, Gathering of Champions is going to read a book every single month. And we're going to divide them into 4 categories. One of the categories will be leadership. One of the categories will be Bible and theology. One of the categories will be marriage and family ministries. One of the categories will be Christian living, right? And of all those 4 categories and all of the books that we're going to read, the 12 books that we're going to read next year, I have one expectation. When we're done, people look more like Christians. What do I mean by that? They live and they think and they act in biblical ways. We're going to keep feeding them information, keep challenging them to read, keep doing presentations, keep having kneecap to kneecap conversations until we see them form and shape into that incredible piece, an incredible leader, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing is we have to be careful that we don't allow people to feel like leadership is designation and then installation. It's not designation and installation. It's designation and development.
Wow. And in complete honesty, one of the things that drew me to your ministry is the sequential exposition of scripture, the regular book assignments. GB gathering right now is in 3-month consecration. Consecration comes with a book list. You know, those kind of developing practices is the kind of ministry that I look to, which led me over the course of this year. We've been preaching through the genres of scripture. We haven't gotten to sequential through large books, but we've walked through the different genres. And by the end of the year, we will have gone through each and every one of the genres of scripture so that we look more like Christians. Better Christians produce better Christian leaders. Next question here. I think this one is going to be just as good. So, guiding principles. How do we govern how we carry out our roles? So we have system structures, strategies, programs, and practices. Now, what principles govern how we carry this out?
I would say probably 5 or 7. Okay. 5 or 7 things. Number 1, as unto the Lord. That we don't make a leader until that leader understands that the moment I say yes, take my oath, get installed, it's all about God. So I don't care if I get mad at the pastor, mad at the people, mad at the church. I'm still serving. I'm still leading because it is all about God. As a matter of fact, I don't want to do anything if it's not about God. As a matter of fact, I say to our church all the time, if it ain't about God, then it ain't about nothing. Just the way it is. So it's got to start with God. God's got to be primary. I preach, you preach because of God. No other reason. Not because of an honorarium, not because of the adulation of and appreciation of people. God
is God.
If God wasn't glorified in this, I would have quit a long time ago.
Wow.
I only do this that God is glorified. Even when I feel miserable about it, I do it that God might be glorified. And I keep going back. God might be glorified. Here's the second thing, that God's people might be edified. I want to know that the work I'm doing is helping someone else. As a matter of fact, if I were to tell you my life's mission, Maurice, it's really rather simple. I want to be a bridge. I want to help people get to people. I want to help people get to outcomes. I want to help people get to open doors. I want to help people get to people. I love bringing people together. I love bringing things together more than I like people coming and saying, oh, can we just look at you? You're the skyscraper. Nah, that means nothing to me, right? I want to know that I helped people get together. How did I help you reach your destiny or get into a new lane of living, get into a new lane of thinking, right? That's what I want more than anything else. More than anything else, I want to know that was a benefit to you. I think the third thing is to commit ourselves to study. That whatever I'm doing, I'm going to keep reading about it until I do it better than anybody's ever done it. Commit ourselves to study. It's got to be. If there's no commitment to study, then what's going to happen is there's going to be a commitment to normalcy. Without a commitment to study, there'll be a commitment to normalcy, status quo, average, and it'll never grow beyond that. And we will become comfortable people producing the average.
God.
We had an average Sunday. Good job. Nah. When you study, you take what you learn and you implement it so it makes it better. You're on a trajectory of betterment. Your curve is your projectile, your trajectory is going upward. I think the next thing is have a serious commitment to your pastor. There are a lot of people who don't mind serving their church. They just don't want to serve with their pastor. It is asinine to want to serve in a church and to do it dismissive of pastoral leadership. I encourage everybody to have a relationship with their pastor, have connections with their pastor, have conversations with their pastor. Learn your pastor, let your pastor learn you, and then you'll discover something mind-boggling. You actually like the person. They can make you better, right? Here's another thing. Work hard at building relationships. It's another principle, that you work hard at building relationship. The power of collaboration is so big, I could not even tolerate someone not doing it with somebody else. If you try to do this ministry without other people, I won't have nothing to do with it.
Wow.
I remember the first time I started taking golf lessons, I was like, I don't need no golf lessons, etc. And finally, my golf mentor said, who's your favorite golfer? I said, Tiger. He said, Tiger's got two. Tiger is winning the PGA and he's got a golf coach. Then we've got to be the kind of people that don't mind binding together, working together, supporting each other, being in collaboration. We need teams. And every person can argue, oh, my personality is I like to work alone. You don't like to live alone. Because if you do, you hadn't bought a ticket to Mars yet. You ain't bought a ticket to the moon yet. You ain't bought a ticket to Saturn or wherever, Jupiter, wherever else they right? I think they say Mars atmosphere is most like Earth. So you ain't bought a ticket to Mars yet. Yeah. Everybody's got to know that there is net worth in network. And we have to build strong networks in church, not cliques. And the difference between the two is that one is about purpose, the other is about being petty.
Mighty God.
Right? We've got purpose. This church can be something great. I want to work with people who want to make it great. I don't want to work with people who want to talk about it and tear it down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't want to be on a team with people who want to talk about it and tear it down. It can be great. Is it perfect? No. Does it have faults? Absolutely. The last thing I'm gonna do is lampoon and lambast it. Yeah, I'm a pretty decent cook. The last thing I'm gonna do is talk about my food. Have I burned some stuff? Yes. Have I oversalted some stuff? Yes. Have I underseasoned some stuff? Yes. But the last thing I'm gonna do is talk. Like, I've gotten away from negative self-talk. Brian, that was so dumb. No. Slow down, Brian. That's a different psychological rebuttal. Slow down, Hodges. Straighten your swing out. Right, do this. Get organized. Get in order. We got to do that. Let me give you another thing. We have to be people who are conscious but not complainers. That while you are aware, you are not a complainer. Conscious people don't complain. Complainers are not conscious. Got to make sure that you have people who are so conscious that they know that things go wrong. They know that people miss it. They know their mistakes are made. I was at a consecration and they asked me to describe the bishop's garment and I just drew a blank. As many times as I've done them, I drew a blank. I'm like, I don't remember what it's called or why they use that. I drew a blank. And I apologized to the chief consecrator. I said, man, I just drew a blank. He said, it happens. Right? I'm conscious enough that I'm not, I ain't tripping.
That's right.
You made a mistake. We ain't going to relive it. Right? I'll give you another one. Another principle, I think, that should govern how all leaders carry out their roles. All leaders should be the greatest professional examples of the faith. They should be on time. They should have a good temperament. They should be thoughtful. They should be careful. They should be dutiful, right? Every leader should do that. If you're a ministry leader and you don't know everybody's birthday, wedding anniversary, you're a bad leader. You can't lead people. Remember what Solomon said? Solomon said, know well the condition of your flock. You know what he said? He said, make sure that you are taking care of them sheep and knowing how they're doing, because if not, they'll die on you and you won't have food or material for clothes. Imagine what would happen if a ministry leader called a person and said, your anniversary is tomorrow. I got a $200 gift card for y'all to go to dinner in Atlanta. That person is going to jump for joy. Why? Because they got something that they never imagined they could get.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to go back to, being that standard bearer.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is absolute gold. I got another question here that I know is one of your favorite things to talk about. So I'm going to throw this out here. So we know that failures are inevitable. One of your key words is leverage. How do we leverage when things go wrong to increase our effectiveness as leaders?
Yeah, by learning. I mean, the short answer is learning. That we should be learning. I read a t-shirt that said, I don't ever lose, I learn, but I don't lose, or something to that effect. Yeah. We should be learning. We should be learning. Young man, I was preaching in Norfolk, Virginia, and the pastor wanted me to speak to two of his underlings, and we had some time together. And they asked me, well, how do you do what you do? I said, I keep on learning. I said, that's why I preach the same sermons over and over again. I want to keep learning. I want to keep doctrine on them. I want to keep improving them. I want to keep bettering them. So I preach them over and over. What should we be preaching? I'm like, just find a new sermon and keep preaching it. So you continue to move that sermon toward mastery.
Yeah.
You think about it. What did I say this time that I need to take out? What didn't I say this time that I need to put in? Keep kneading it until you get it to mastery.
Wow. So I'm gonna rush this question because I want to get to this last question. This final question is it takes us back to the top of our conversation about being reflective. All your years of experience, lessons that you know now today, that if you could go back to the beginning of your leadership journey, what would you tell yourself, knowing all that you know today about leadership? What would you say to 30 years ago?
I would say develop. Read, study, attend conferences, volunteer your time, work in ministry, pick the brains of other leaders, develop. Don't stop developing. Solomon says it's a man's appetite that works for him. His hunger drives him on. And years ago, I wrote a sermon I preached, something must drive you. Most leaders that I know are not driven people. They like popularity, they like ease, but they're not driven. And I think that's the thing that I want to get at. That leaders should be driven leaders.
Wow.
There should be something chasing you into your destiny.
Wow.
Chasing you into your space where you say, I gotta have this.
Wonderful. Bishop, I want to appreciate you for giving us some of your Saturday morning.
Absolutely.
I want to appreciate you for giving us some of your Saturday morning. This has been, I am on page 4 of my notes. I'm going to call Bishop Jamie Johnson and brag that I spent 40 minutes in the mind of our bishop without him. I'm going to call and brag that I spent 40 minutes in the mind of our bishop without it.
I appreciate you for doing this, and I appreciate the quality of ministry that's going to emerge. Remember, long patience. It won't happen overnight, but it'll happen.
Yes, sir.
It'll continue to improve. You'll see small glimpses of it throughout the discourse of the close of this year and the beginning of next year. And as you see it, celebrate it.
Yes.
Spend more time talking about what's going wrong than what's going right. Value the capacity to be free enough to love people into their maturity.
Wow.
Remember, maturation is knowing what to do. Saturation is doing it without thinking.
Oh, Lord. I got to put that in my notes. Any closing remarks you want to give us before we wrap up for the day?
Yeah, make leadership a part of everything you do. It'll change your life. Make leadership a part of everything you do. As a matter of fact, anything you want to do and do it with success in mind, if you don't have a leadership lens, a bend, it won't happen. And if it does, it won't be fulfilling. Make leadership a part of everything you do.
Thank you so much, Bishop. We appreciate it. GB, we look forward to seeing you in the morning. God bless you. Peace.
I love you. Peace.